Hello and welcome to Jane Doe's Dark Secrets, the true crime podcast where we delve into the most chilling and mysterious cases from around the world. I am your host Jane, and each week join me as we uncover the truth behind these gripping stories, explore the minds of those who commit the heinous acts, and seek justice for the victims. In today's episode, we delve into the chilling and tragic case of the Van Breda family axe murders. On January the 27th, 2015, the Zalze Winelands Golf Estate in Stellenbosch, South Africa, became the scene of a horrific crime that shocked the nation and the world. In the early hours of that morning, Martin and Teresa van Breda, along with their eldest son Rudi, were brutally attacked and killed with an axe. Their daughter Marli sustained several injuries but miraculously survived, while the youngest son Henri emerged with minor wounds. What initially appeared to be a home invasion soon took a darker turn as suspicions fell on Henri, the sole unscathed family member. In this episode, we'll explore the details of that fateful night, the subsequent investigation, and the trial that captivated the public's attention. We will unravel the complexities of this case, seeking to understand the motives and circumstances behind one of South Africa's most notorious family murders. So a bit of background into today's location. Stellenbosch is a picturesque town located in the Western Cape province of South Africa. It lies approximately 50 kilometres or 31 miles east of Cape Town, nestled in the fertile river valley at the foot of Stellenbosch Mountain. The town is home to Stellenbosch University, one of South Africa's oldest and most prestigious universities. The university's campus and buildings occupy a significant portion of the town centre. South Africa has high levels of violent crime, including murder, assault and robbery. The murder rate is significantly higher than the global average, with 37.3 murders per 100,000 people. Home robbery is the second most common crime, affecting around 195,000 households within 2022 to 2023. And gated communities offer enhanced security measures such as controlled access, 24/7 surveillance and patrolling security officers, which provides residents with a sense of safety and peace of mind. Gated communities are often associated with higher social status and exclusivity. They attract buyers seeking a secure and prestigious living environment, which can also lead to increased property values within these areas. Studies have shown that gated communities in South Africa may not be as safe as residents perceive. In some cases, burglary rates within gated communities and their immediate surroundings are higher compared to other areas, most likely because these houses are considered more affluent. Gated communities are very common in Stellenbosch. Some notable gated communities in Stellenbosch include where we are visiting today, the Zalze Winelands Golf Estate. This estate combines luxury living with a championship golf course, wine vineyards and stunning views of the surrounding mountains. Okay, so let's talk about the family. The Van Breda family, originally from South Africa, had spent several years living in Australia before returning to their homeland in 2014. Martin van Breda, the patriarch, was a successful businessman and the managing director of the Australian branch of Engel & Volkers, a prestigious real estate company. His wife Teresa was a computer science graduate from the University of Johannesburg and was well known for her warm and caring nature. As I stated earlier, the couple had 3 children, Rudi, Henri and Marli. Rudi was the eldest boy. He was bright and ambitious, pursuing a master's degree at the University of Melbourne in Australia. Henri, the middle child, had a more troubled path, struggling with substance abuse and spending time in a rehabilitation centre in Cape Town, where he received treatment for his addiction to drugs such as cannabis and methamphetamine. The goal of his rehabilitation was to help him overcome his dependency and address the behavioural problems associated with his substance abuse. Despite these efforts, Henri's struggle with addiction and erratic behaviour continued to be a source of tension within the family. His time in rehab was part of the family's broader attempt to support him and help him find a more stable path. Marli, the youngest and the only daughter, was a vibrant teenager attending high school and enjoying a close-knit relationship with her family. In 2014, the Van Breda family moved back to South Africa and settled in the luxurious gated community of Zalze Winelands Golf Estate in Stellenbosch. Their home was a symbol of their success and provided a serene environment for the family. Despite their outward appearance of affluence and happiness, underlying tensions and issues, particularly concerning Henri's behaviour, were present. The family's return to South Africa was meant to be a fresh start, but tragically it ended in the brutal murders of Martin, Teresa and Rudi on the 27th of January 2015. The family had dinner together and spent the evening engaging in typical activities. There were no signs of any unusual behaviour or tension that evening. Henri claimed that he and his brother Rudi watched a movie together before heading to bed. In the early hours of the 27th of January 2015, Henri allegedly woke up to the sound of his brother Rudi being attacked with an axe in their shared bedroom. According to Henri, he saw an intruder wearing dark clothes, gloves and a balaclava attacking Rudi. He claimed the intruder then attacked him, causing his minor injuries. The attacker then moved to the parents' bedroom where Martin and Teresa were brutally murdered with the same axe. Marli, who was in her own room, was also attacked and sustained severe head injuries. After the attack, Henri did not immediately call for help. Instead, he claimed to have lost consciousness due to a seizure and only called emergency services 3 hours later around 7 a.m. Henri was diagnosed with juvenile myoclonic epilepsy. On November 8, 2017, he suffered a seizure and was admitted to hospital in Cape Town for observations and tests. His defence lawyer informed the court, spoilers, that Henri had experienced petit mal seizures for some time and that the diagnosis of juvenile myoclonic epilepsy was permanent to his case and trial. But we will talk about this later on. Juvenile myoclonic epilepsy is a condition that typically presents during childhood or adolescence and is characterised by myoclonic jerks, which are shock-like irregular movements of the arm. So during the phone call to emergency services, Henri reported that his family had been attacked by an intruder with an axe. Henri's account of the events was inconsistent and lacked clarity. He struggled to provide specific details about the attack and the supposed intruder, which made it difficult for the emergency responders to understand the situation. Henri's demeanour during the call was unusually calm and detached, given the severity of the situation. He even giggled at one point, which seemed inappropriate and further fueled suspicion about his potential involvement. Henri's tone and manner during the call did not convey a sense of urgency. This lack of urgency was frustrating for the emergency operators who thought Henri was prank calling them. I would advise you to go on YouTube and listen to the call, as I was also getting frustrated at the lack of urgency from both Henri and the call operator, who you could tell thought it was a prank. When the police arrived, they found Martin, Teresa and Rudi dead, while Marli was critically injured and clinging to life, and she was rushed to hospital. Henri had minor injuries which investigators later determined were likely self-inflicted to support his story of an intruder. The crime scene showed no signs of forced entry, and the axe used in the attack was found to belong to the Van Breda's household. And like I said, Henri's behaviour and inconsistencies when speaking to the police raised suspicions, leading to a thorough investigation. This investigation into the Van Breda family murders uncovered several key pieces of evidence at the crime scene. So number one, the axe was the primary weapon used in the attack, which was found at the scene, and like I said earlier, it was identified as belonging to the Van Breda household. The knife also recovered, though it was not used in the murders, was determined to have come from the Van Breda residence and was used against Henri. The blood evidence, so Henri van Breda was found with minor injuries and was dressed in sleep shorts and white socks covered in blood, and the blood on his clothing matched the DNA of his parents and brother. No signs of forced entry, so investigators found no signs of forced entry into the house, which cast doubt again on Henri's initial claim of an intruder. It was believed that Henri tampered with the crime scene after the murders, then inflicted injuries on himself and provided false information to the police to mislead them about the true identity of the perpetrator. Henri's inconsistent and often vague testimonies during the investigation and the trial further raised suspicions about his involvement in the murders. The case attracted significant media attention, and various reports highlighted Henri's past issues, including substance abuse and his behavioural problems. The public scrutiny added pressure onto the investigation. The funeral for Martin, Teresa and Rudi was held on the 5th of February 2015 at the Mortletter Park Dutch Reformed Church in Pretoria. Marli, who was recovering from her serious injuries, was under police protection and she did not attend. Over the following months, the police continued to gather their evidence and build their case against Henri. They examined Henri's medical records and interviewed individuals who knew him. Then on the 13th of June 2016, a year and a half of investigations, Henri van Breda surrendered to the police. He was charged with the murders of his parents and brother Rudi and the attempted murder of his sister Marli. Henri was released on bail the next day, which blows my mind that you can be charged with the murder of 3 people and let out on bail, especially with his sister surviving his potential attack. On the 4th of April 2017, Henri's murder trial begins. Henri's defence team presented several key arguments to counter the charges against him during the trial. The defence maintained that intruder was responsible for the murders, and Henri claimed that an unknown assailant dressed in dark clothes and a balaclava had entered the house and attacked his family. The defence argued that the high-tech security system on the gated estate could have been breached due to human error or other vulnerabilities. The defence highlighted the absence of direct evidence linking Henri to the murders. They pointed out there were no eyewitnesses to the crime and the case relied heavily on circumstantial evidence, but circumstantial evidence is still evidence. Henri's defence team argued that his injuries were consistent with his account of being attacked by an intruder. They also suggested that his delayed call to the emergency services was due to the shock and confusion following the traumatic event which caused him to have a seizure. The defence questioned the reliability of the forensic evidence presented by the prosecution. They argued that the bloodstains and other physical evidence could be interpreted in multiple ways and did not conclusively prove Henri's guilt. The defence proposed alternative explanations for the events, including the possibility that Marli, who survived the attack, which caused her to have amnesia due to her injuries, could have been involved in the attack of her family. However, this argument was not strongly pursued as it lacked any evidence. The defence also attempted to portray Henri as a non-violent individual who had no history of aggression or criminal behaviour. They emphasised his troubled past, including substance abuse issues, but argued these did not make him capable of committing such a brutal crime. Henri's diagnosis of juvenile myoclonic epilepsy had a notable impact on his trial, but it was met with scepticism and controversy. The defence used the epilepsy diagnosis to explain the nearly 3-hour gap between the murders and Henri's call to emergency services. They argued that Henri had a seizure and was in a postical state, which is a period of confusion following a seizure, during this time which accounted for his delayed response. Dr. James Butler, a neurologist, testified in the defence stating Henri's condition could cause seizures and subsequent amnesia. He suggested that Henri's behaviour and memory loss were consistent with a postical state. The prosecution challenged the timing and validity of the diagnosis. They argued that the diagnosis was conveniently made during the trial and questioned why Henri had not mentioned his condition earlier. Prosecutor Susan Galloway pointed out that Henri's injuries were self-inflicted and that his behaviour did not align with someone who had just experienced a severe seizure. The judge, Suraj Desai, expressed doubts about the diagnosis, noting that it was highly controversial and came nearly 3 years after the murders. He questioned the reliability of the diagnosis and its relevance to the case. Despite the defence's efforts to use the epilepsy diagnosis to explain Henri's actions, the court ultimately found him guilty. The diagnosis did not significantly alter the outcome as the evidence and inconsistencies in Henri's story weighed heavily against him. The court heard that many, if not all of his injuries had been self-inflicted with a knife. The prosecution pointed to many other inconsistencies in Henri's testimony, such as why would an intruder seeking to rob the home ignore all the valuable items downstairs and embark on a killing spree upstairs instead? Henri couldn't answer that. He also couldn't answer why there were no signs of forced entry or why he had escaped with the deep gashes his family suffered. Experts who analysed those gashes testified that they came from one attacker who used the same amount of force on each victim. The security experts at the trial all but said that not even Houdini could have broken into the Van Breda's home. The Zalze Golf Estate has also been described as medium security gated community, but in truth it was considered one of the safest places to live in South Africa, with motion detectors and alarm system, 24-hour guard patrol, access control gates and an electric fence. Another inconsistency that unsettled the court was the amount of time it took Henri to ring the emergency services. Court papers revealed that a distressed Henri called his girlfriend at 4:42 a.m. numerous times, but they went unanswered. Remember, he didn't ring emergency services until 7 a.m. He then searched the internet for local emergency numbers, but not calling for help until 3 hours later. It was argued that Henri wanted his family to bleed to death. Asked to account for the time lapse, the young man said he collapsed after witnessing his family being attacked and remained unconscious for hours. A South African paramedic describing the aftermath of the attack on the Van Breda family said it was the worst thing he had seen in his 39-year career. Blood ran like a waterfall down the stairs, testified a now retired Christian Collenberg. During Henri van Breda's trial, the responses from his surviving family members and relatives were marked by a mix of grief, disbelief and a quest for justice. Marli van Breda, Henri's younger sister, survived the attack but suffered severe head injuries and amnesia, leaving her unable to recall the events of that night. Due to her injuries and memory loss, she did not testify during Henri's trial, as her survival and injuries were central to the case. The extended family, including relatives from both sides, attended the trial and expressed their grief and shock over the murders. They were supportive of Marli and sought justice for the brutal killings of Martin, Teresa and Rudi. The family made limited public statements during the trial, focusing on supporting Marli and coping with the immense loss. Their primary concern was ensuring that justice was served and that the truth about the murders was uncovered. The family's legal representatives worked closely with the prosecution to present a strong case against Henri. They were involved in the legal process, providing necessary information and support to the investigators and prosecutors. A recording of Henri's phone call to the emergency services, made around 7 a.m, was played to the court. My family and me were attacked by a guy with an axe, Henri said. But who would want to kill the family in such a brutal and merciless manner? No one, said Cornelius Andres van Breda. He testified at his nephew's trial, saying that his 54-year-old brother Martin and sister-in-law Teresa, who was 55, were loving people and had no enemies. He told the court they had been a close-knit family. Marli, who has since undergone extensive surgery and physiotherapy after the attack, still has no recollection of the horrific day. Her extensive head injuries and self-defense wounds were used to lead the testimony in court. The court unanimously found Henri van Breda guilty on 3 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder and 1 count of obstructing justice. His trial lasted 66 days, but the verdict was postponed for a month due to a reported death within the judge's family. South Africa does not have a jury system. In sentencing Henri van Breda, Judge Suraj Desiree said the attacks displayed a high level of innate cruelty and an almost unprecedented degree of disregard for the welfare of his own family. Each murderous attack upon a family member constituted a very serious crime, warranting the severest penalty possible, said the judge. Henri's lawyers said there would be no appeal against the decision on June the 27th, 2018. The judge also said there was no security breach in the night of the murders, and nobody in the estate had complained about strangers or any undue occurrence. The judge continued to say, in the absence of any intruder, the only reasonable answer is that Henri wanted to mislead police and that he staged the scene of the crime. He said that Henri had intentionally inflicted injuries on himself in order to mislead the police as to the true identity of the perpetrator. Like I said, Henri was found guilty of the murder and attempted murder and obstruction of justice on the 21st of May 2018 by the Western Cape High Court. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for each of the 3 murders and 15 years for the attempted murder, then 12 months for the obstruction. The sentences are to run concurrently. On the 8th of June 2018, Henri was transferred from Pollsmoor Prison to the Drakenstein Correctional Centre where he will serve out his sentence. So a bit of aftermath since the sentencing. Henri van Breda was described as the quiet one who was very well mannered, said a family friend, Paul Frenny. Mr. Frenny worked for Martin van Breda's real estate agency, Angel and Volkers. Mr. Frenny said he developed a close relationship with the South African family who bought a luxury home nearby him. Mr. Frenny met Martin at a coffee shop only 8 weeks before he was hacked to death by an axe. Initially, Mr. Frenny said he couldn't believe it was possible that Henri was responsible for the murders. But it's been proved he's done this heinous things, he deserves to be punished, Mr. Frenny said. Martin van Breda had returned to South Africa to open up a private school, but had kept the family's Budham home with the plans to return. Mr. Frenny said the family was well off but didn't show it. They were Christian people, a lovely family. The kids would sit in the office and do their homework. He, meaning Henri, was the quietest one. The older brother, Rudi, was more outgoing. He was always very nice. It was Mr. This and Mr. That. It was awful. I just don't know what would possess a boy to do it all. So what would possess him to do it? Henri van Breda's issues were multifaceted and played a significant role in the tragic events that unfolded. But here are some key aspects that could provide a motive. So Henri struggled with substance abuse, which included the use of drugs such as cannabis and meth. His addiction issues were a source of concern for the family and contributed to tensions within the household. Henri exhibited erratic behaviour and had a history of disciplinary issues, which were exacerbated by the drug use. Unlike his brother Rudi, who was academically successful, Henri faced difficulties in his studies. He dropped out of the University of Melbourne, where he was studying computer science, and returned to South Africa without completing his degree. There were indications that Henri may have been dealing with underlying mental health issues, although these were never formally diagnosed or treated. His erratic behaviour and substance abuse could have been manifestations of deeper psychological problems. The van Breda family dynamics were strained, particularly due to Henri's issues. His parents, Martin and Teresa, were supportive but also frustrated by his lack of direction and the problems he brought into the household. Neighbours and close family friends described Henri as always being the black sheep of the family. While the other van Breda children had been thriving at school and university, Henri decided to drop out. He came back to live with his parents in South Africa in August 2014 with no real plans for his life, perhaps disappointing his loving but strict father. And Henri's drug addiction led to his parents threatening to cut off his allowance if he did not clean up his act. Many believe the pressure of not measuring up to the expectations of the perfect family dynamic may have driven him to the edge just months after he arrived back in South Africa. But justice has now been served for the unsuspecting victims of Henri van Breda. We still do not know what snapped in the mind of the young Henri, only that something did, and it left a trail of blood in its wake. Marli van Breda's recovery from the brutal attack was both physically and emotionally challenging. Marli sustained severe head injuries, including multiple chop wounds, which resulted in significant blood loss. She underwent extensive medical treatment and rehabilitation to recover from these injuries. One of the most significant impacts on Marli's recovery was her amnesia, and she was unable to recall the events of the night. The emotional toll on Marli was immense. She lost her parents and brother in the attack, and she had to come to terms with the fact that her surviving brother Henri was responsible for the murders. This realization added a layer of psychological trauma to her recovery process. Due to her injuries and the loss of her immediate family, Marli was appointed a legal guardian to help her make major decisions, including those related to the trial and her future care. This support was crucial in helping her navigate the legal complexities and her recovery. Marli's recovery involved ongoing rehab to address both her physical and cognitive impairments. This included therapy to help her regain strength and cope with the psychological impact of the trauma. Marli's case attracted significant media attention, which added to the pressure and stress for her recovery. However, despite this, she has shown remarkable resilience and strength in the face of such adversity. Marli's journey to recovery has been long and arduous, but her resilience and the support from her extended family and legal guardians have been instrumental in helping her rebuild her life. As we wrap up today's episode on the Van Breda family axe murders, we reflect on the tragic events that shattered a seemingly successful and close-knit family. The brutal killings of Martin, Teresa and Rudi van Breda and severe injury of Marli left a lasting impact on their loved ones and the community. Henri van Breda's conviction for these heinous crimes brought some measures of justice, but the emotional scars and unanswered questions remain. Marli's resilience and recovery are a testament to her strength, even as she continues to navigate the complexities of her new reality. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the dark secrets of the Van Breda axe murders. If you found this episode compelling, make sure to follow Jane Doe's Dark Secrets for more true crime stories that uncover the hidden truths behind some of the world's most chilling cases. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at the Jane Doe PCast for updates and behind the scene content, and to share your thoughts on today's episode. I would love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments what other dark secrets you would like me to uncover in future episodes. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe. This is Jane signing off.